Welcome to Hobby Clubhouse with a 3-way review of Gundam Hathaway kits in celebration of the Japanese premiere of Gundam Hathaway in theaters. So if you haven't seen the other 2 videos yet, make sure to go check out the HGUC Penelope or the China-made Model Comprehend Xi Gundam. This review is for the Bandai high-grade Universal Century 1144 Xi Gundam, and this will be a little different from a usual review because this kit is a gift given to me by MJ 2005 Gundam that's been detailed up with colors and beautifully top-coated. And do go check out his work as well with kit reviews and MS profiles, there's a link in the description below. And this entire review exists solely because of his surprise present for me. Really, I didn't set aside any budget for this kit for a review, but now that I have it here, I'm certainly going to show it off as a part of a celebration for the movie. So the HGUC Xi Gundam was released on April 24, 2021, and sold for a price of 6,600 yen. The box art here is done by Naochika Morishita, who is perhaps the most prominent artist we see nowadays with Bandai model kits. The giant box measures 39 by 31 by 10.5 centimeters, which is really chunky, but it's not quite as big as the one we got for the Penelope if we put them side by side. The short side of the box tells us that this is the 238th release of the modern HG line, and most of the info here is the same as the front of the box. The long side of the box has a collection of studio shots and some boasting about all the gimmicks that we get in this kit. The other side has a few more shots tucked on top of some in-universe information about the MS along with a shot mimicking the box art. Now this kit came to be completed and assembled, so there won't be a layout of the runners this time, so here's a shot of the runners from the instructions instead. We do get a sheet of stickers here with 2 of these here for each of the eyes, then this one here which goes onto the camera on the forehead, then these ones here go onto the spots on the chest armor, 2 for each side, and these ones go onto the side of the feet on each of the feet. Then these orange stickers go onto the vent on the back side of the shoulders, 1 for each side. And then these bigger ones go onto the side of the legs, 1 for each leg. These red ones are for the back skirt here. And the same goes with these little gray ones that go a bit higher above them. These big yellow ones wrap around the tips of the 2 wings on the back. This orange one is for the top aiming sensor of the beam rifle, and this green one is for the sensor on the bottom of it. This white sticker is for the inner side of the shield's tip, which is supposed to be in an off-white. These gray stickers go onto the vents on the shield. The instructions come as a stapled booklet, just like the Penelope, and on the back we have all these studio shots of the Xi Gundam that go along with the color guide on the corner of the page. The center pages have the expected information on the Xi with details on all its parts and its weapons, and then some generous background to complement whatever we see of it in the movie, along with some plug with other MSs from the movie. And the black and white pages are for assembly instructions as you'd expect. So if you didn't know this already, the HGUC has a very distinct look. Specifically, this design of the MS closely follows the original drawings of Yasuhiro Moriki from the novel. Now if that doesn't sound like much, here's the Gustav Karl that we got in the HGUC line, and here's Mr. Moriki's original design. And they're really not the same thing, and the Xi Gundam here is firmly more towards the Moriki camp, while the other ones we got, like the Gundam Fixed Figuration release, and the Robot Damashi release, and even the BB Senshi kit all stem from Katoki Hajime's reinterpretation of the MS. Mr. Moriki's designs are really hard to describe when you look at it, but some characteristics here include a lot of shapes and lines with sweeping curves that layer and overlap and interrupt one another. So if you find one of the many pointy bits and you try to trace it back to its other end, you're probably going to get distracted before you ever get there. You just visually can't break down the parts into their mechanical and physical components, so there's a metaphysical and there's a fantastical quality to the way the MS is put together. So this isn't going to be everyone's cup of tea. It looks alien and you can spend forever looking at this thing, and it's never going to convey any useful information to you about its technology or its character, and that's not supposed to be good. But it's special because we didn't think Bandai would ever make this and the Penelope, but yet here we are. And this thing here is Moriki style to the max, and some will prefer this purity over the Katoki design. But actually, strange looks aside, this kit isn't that complicated, and it's more like a normal high-grade kit, but it's just made real big. And speaking of simple, there are these beam saber handles up here that you can just pluck off the mounts. The model comprehend kit in comparison has an entire rack that holds the handle in place. The handles here are long and slim, and they're quite a bit bigger than the common beam saber on other mobile suits, but there is a good reason for that, because you get two different kinds of blades. The common HG kind, that's the longer one here, and then these shorter ones that we hardly ever get in green. So the long beam goes onto one end of the handle, and the short beam goes onto the other end. And this makes this two-ended beam saber that reminds us of the Gelgoog's beam Naginata. This is also a new design that's added to the movie, and the Kusi had just a regular beam saber all along before this. Here's a side-to-side with the China-made Kusi's beam saber with the familiar round beam that's also a little shorter than our HG one. But the China kit also has this more radical and powerful version that ends up being a bit bigger and also longer than our green beam. And the handles go into the closed fist, and they can be held without any particular problems. And this is a good chance to look at those really big lower arms right here. And when I say big, I mean really big. Just look at it next to the entry grade RX-78's arm and the size of that fist there. These hands are so large they connect to this special chunky peg that keeps them firmly attached. You get 5 hands in total, a pair of closed fists that we've been looking at, and then a pair of open palms, and then a single trigger finger hand. With fists this big, the sculpt really has to be good, and you can see all the details on the giant fingers here. Small notches and little spikes break up the plain geometry, and the hand is very interesting to look at. The open hands are just as good, if not for the hollow spaces dotted all around on this side here. It's such a big shame because the sculpt here really is great. These spots aren't the hardest to fill in, but it's still bad that we have to fill in them at all on such a visible surface. The last hand is a trigger finger hand, which is only for the right hand. It's still good looking, like the other hands, and inside we can see a peg that's going to keep a weapon firmly in place. And speaking of weapons, let's look at the beam rifle here with nice bits of blue poking through the grey exterior. It has 2 aiming sensors at the front, which is quite unique to this gun, and if we bring in the China-made model comprehend Xi Gundam's beam rifle, we can see just how big the HG gun is. You'd never have thought the Katoki design had a tiny gun, but now that you've seen this and you notice it, you're always going to find it a little bit too small relative to the MS size. There is a slot on the handle that works with the trigger finger hand that we just saw, and it's easy to slot it in, and then you'll have the gun firmly held, even without the fingers on top. For the shield, it departs a lot from the Katoki design being mostly white this time. And yes, this is more or less what the shield is supposed to look like in the movie, so it's not missing a lot of colors or anything. If we bring in the model comprehend kit again, we can see not only the different character that the plain white shield brings, but we can also admire the much better sculpt of the HG kit, which makes the Chinese-made shield look flat and the details much less natural in comparison. It's the kind of work that Bandai puts into their kits that you really don't notice until it's gone. On the back, both shields interestingly have a sliding rail design, and the connector on this shield can, of course, slide along that rail. But it also lets the shield rotate along that mount. To connect the shield, you have to take off this cover here on the arm, and then you fit the shield right onto the exposed hole, and it's as simple as that. And now that we've seen all the weapons, let's take a look at the flight mode. Whereas the Penelope has a slightly convoluted transformation, and the China-made Xi has a really basic one, this HG kit sits right in the middle, along with some new addition to the movie design. So first we want to remove the wings on the back. Then we also want to pull off this piece that the wings mount onto. On this piece, we want to remove the gray part here on the side, and then we'll replace it with this other gray piece here, so we get this nice deployed arm without any fidgety moving parts. The wings then go back onto this here, and then we'll have to return to the Xi for a little bit, where we'll rotate this beam saber rack so that it points sideways on the shoulder. Now it's safe to put the handle back so that you don't snap the peg off by mistake. Then we'll turn the shoulder armor's front part upwards like this, and then turn these parts on the chest upwards too. And then the back armor goes up as well, giving us a flat plane like this on top with some very cool geometry peeking through the gaps. Now we can place the wings back on, and they'll now be in a horizontal orientation, which this is the new bit of change that they added to the movie's design. The old design just had the wings go up and that was it. So finally, these two fins on the feet are flipped down, and that puts the Xi Gundam into its flight mode. Now I have to praise Bandai or Sunrise a little bit here, because they put some thought into this. No, really. Truth be told, this flight mode is pretty lame in theory, isn't it? It's just the shoulders flipped up and then the wings flipped down, but I suspect the designers thought the same and they added this one new change, the sideways wings. And that gives us this whole new unified shape on top that's so much more interesting to look at, and it conveys a lot more of the logic and the technology behind the mobile suit. Seeing the same thing on a China-made Xi, and you'll really notice the lack of inspiration on the older Katoki design, which is quite the sinful thing to say about any Katoki design according to the fans, but I'll stick to my words here, and I insist that something as small as these wings make this flight mode actually quite beautiful and very interesting to look at, and what a surprise, I really didn't expect that. And here's a closer look at the wings on the back, with this lower section that can be turned like this, and then this upper section can also be turned like this. As if I haven't praised these wings enough yet, the movable wings make the kit much more expressive, and you'll really feel it once you try to pose this kit. And speaking of articulation, starting from the top, the head moves upwards a whole lot, and then downwards a bit, and it can spin a full circle with just enough space for the pointy head to pass. The arms swing out this much, and they swing back and forth however much room you have with the shoulder armor. The biceps allow a full rotation of the lower arm. The elbow has a 90-degree bend. Just like the Penelope, the forearms can also rotate on a single axis. The gigantic hands can turn, but they can't really do a full circle. You can adjust them on their ball joint. The pointy armor at the front here can move up and down a little bit, as we've already seen. And the waist can bend quite a lot backwards, but not at all forward. It turns side to side only a tiny little bit. The front skirts lift up this much, and the side skirts lift up this much. The back skirts can go up this much. The legs swing outwards a full 90 degrees. And the legs can turn along their thigh. You get a kick forward just shy of 90 degrees. And the really great knee bend folds until the leg armor hit each other. The feet swing upwards this much. And they swing backwards this much. And they go side to side this much. And the toes have a bit of swivel as well. For something with pointy bits everywhere and those gigantic shoulders, you really can pose the Xi in almost any way you like, as long as you don't need to waist to move. The shape of the body and the arms limit the articulation far more than any of the engineering, so it's good. It makes use of all the modern techniques at Bandai's disposal to give you the greatest range of movements that you can expect from a big fat flying triangle. For size comparisons, here's the lower end benchmark, the entry grade RX-78. And then, here's the upper end benchmark, the high grade New Gundam. The Xi handily makes both MSs look not just short, but tiny by volume. The Xi just takes up a lot of space with its giant triangular shoulders and its big arms. I mean, its width is about 80% its full height. So this is an imposing mobile suit if you're going to display it with any of your other 1144 kits. But of course, there's nothing like the HGUC Penelope to rain on that party. Big as the Xi is, the Penelope is taller, and even before we count the bird head on top, it's way bulkier. There's just no contest here, and the Xi looks tame by comparison if you can imagine such a thing. And of course, one more side by side here with the China-made Model Comprehend Xi Gundam. The China Xi is clearly taller than our HG kit here, but it's also got much smaller shoulders that are further offset by its really long legs. The HGUC keeps an overall stout and triangular shape, and that gives it an air of uncanny strangeness. It may not be as tall, but it makes up for that with a lot of mass. With all that said, here's a Hobby Clubhouse 3-point verdict on the Bandai high-grade Universal Sentry 1144 Xi Gundam. Number 1. It's big, but it's not clumsy. The Kusi's rival, the Penelope, is also big, but it's also really hard to handle. But I was quite surprised to find that the Kusi felt not too different than handling a slightly chubby master grade. There weren't parts rattling all over, nor did the arms or the legs slip on their joints, and you can pose it however you want without the kit fighting you. Sure, there's a bit of stuff in the way like the shoulder armor or the chest, but there's enough options to open up some more space that you'll never feel too constrained. Of course, this is still a big chunky boy, so the types of poses that you can do that will look good with this kit are a bit more limited, but really that's no fault of the engineering. And number 2, it respects Moriki's design. A problem I've had with other Hathaway kits, whether it's the Gustav Karl or the Messer or even the Penelope to an extent, is that they've treated the original novels as designed by Mr. Moriki as some kind of dark and dirty secret. I mean, will they turn some people away? Absolutely. They will shock your eyes right out of their eye holes, but that's exactly why they're so unique. It's a part of their identity. Heck, you think this IP would have stayed untouched for so long if it didn't look so crazy? It's good to see Bandai and Sunrise have the guts here to embrace that insane and nonsensical design for the Kusi. It's really ugly, seriously, and it's beautiful because of that. And number 3, it's a better choice than the Penelope. Now I'm sure some of you will disagree with me on this, but between the Kusi and the Penelope for the HG line, I think the Kusi is the better model kit. On a practical level, you can enjoy this kit and play around with it and display it more easily. It works with action bases where the Penelope won't, and it's not as fussy like the Penelope is with a base MS and then an add-on armor and a bunch of different configurations. The Kusi may look really strange, but at its heart it's just a really big HG kit and it works like most other HG kits that you've built before. And it costs a lot less, and it takes up a lot less space, and it's not going to make your wife divorce you. So if you're deciding between the two, the Kusi is the more reasonable choice. You know, or just buy the twin set like a crazy person and see what your spouse has to say about that. So that's a review of the HGUC Xi Gundam. No doubt, many will be considering this kit once they've watched the movie, and I think this is a surprisingly solid addition to any collection, no matter how strange it looks. Thank you so much for watching. Come look us up on social media with updates on upcoming videos and sneak peeks at future projects, links are in the description below. Or, hang on here some more with one of these other videos. But before you go, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to be notified of new videos from Hobby Clubhouse, and I'll see you next time.